Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Chiropractic Student Podcast. Today we are joined by Dr. Laurence Tham. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
So excited to be here.
Um, it's really interesting. I found out about you from Tom, who we were just talking about, my boss, and you've actually helped coach as well. So you've got a really great background of helping chiropractors already, and it's really great. Hopefully today we get to the bottom of your route through chiropractic. The first thing I like to ask a lot of people is really simply, where did you go to school and how was chiropractic school for you?
Yeah, so I went to CMCC in Toronto. I was probably about 23 to 27 because we in Canada typically we usually finish degree first in university before we go into chiropractic college. So most of us are a little older than most of the chiropractic students that are around nowadays. And it was a 4-year program, and so it kind of did 8 years of uni. So by then, I think most of us, school wise, was more matured in a sense because most of us knew this is what we're getting into because it's not because we already have a degree, so we could go out and get jobs and stuff already. But we choose this as a profession, and we stuck around for another 4 years. So think of it like as a master's or a doctorate. And so I think going through school was a great experience. We met some great people. They're all over the world now, and they're doing amazing things. And I think school was tough, but at the same time, I also recognize that so university, I tried really hard, get good grades and marks and passing exams. But I think when I got to chiropractic college, there was a mind switch. I'm not suggesting, by the way, for the students listening, but I just want to kind of give you my background on this, which was I kind of I dialed it down a notch in terms of like my academics. And there's a couple of reasons for that. And like I said, this is just my experience. It doesn't have to be yours. So please don't, still get good grades because, I think that's still important. But I realized that I started to think about what was important to me as a chiropractor or what will be important for me as a chiropractor. And I realized I started recognizing that being the best in school wasn't necessarily going to get me become the best chiropractor. And
Mhm.
meaning like best in school in terms of academics and being the top of the class isn't going to get me there. What I recognize is that being the best chiropractor is what's going to make me the best chiropractor. And what that means to me, at least what I saw was communication, understanding business because it is a business, and really being a great and amazing adjuster. Like, and the combination of those three things was a priority instead of like understanding, what is I don't know, the innervation of the vagus nerve and like how that functions. Like I'm not saying that's not important. Like of course you want to understand that, but it just wasn't the top of my priority to memorize everything and be the brightest student in the class. Or does that make sense?
Yeah.
And um, so I still did enough to make sure I did great in school, but I also managed to make sure I spent those 4 years to learn as much as I possibly can around philosophy, principles, science, the art of the adjustment, the business skills, and most importantly, communication skills. Because your patients are not going to ask you what you got in anatomy 101. They're not going to like. I never had my degree on the wall because it's the assumption that I have a degree. That's why I can practice on you, right? So it's like, or I have a practice and I can, so I have a license. So I didn't care so much about the marks anymore. I cared more about what would make me better as a practitioner and how can I serve my patients better.
Did you get all of that education from college, or did you have to do a lot of external learning?
Absolutely not. No offense to CMCC, but no, like I didn't. CMCC was a very, you know, academic kind of school, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, they have a job to do. I'm not no. I'm glad I went through that school because it taught me what I need to know and also gave me the degree that I have. So I'm no ill will from the perspective of that. I had definitely had to go to as many seminars as possible. So starting in my first, I would say first or second year, I went to tons of seminars. I went to as many seminars as possible. I mean, financially is the smartest thing you can do because
Yeah, it's so
everything is
cheap
like
and
a
it's cheap.
third of the price or a quarter of the price. Um, I traveled, this is like I'm not, I can say this in hindsight, but I didn't attend all the classes, right? And there's reasons for that because I won't get into it because I mean we actually had note takers. In some classes were only like 3 students in it out of 160, because they those 3 students would take notes and give it to all the rest of the class. That's how we function in CMCC. I'm not sure they do that now. They were called note takers. They got paid for it in a way. So we all pitched in money. We get photocopies. It's back in the day of photocopies, right? So
Yeah.
I graduated 20 years ago. So
Yeah.
internet wasn't, it was a thing, but it's not as big of a thing as it is now. So to answer your question, yes, I travel. I went to as many seminars as possible in Toronto. I drove to Life University. That's like a 10-12 hour drive to go to DE. I used to fly to San Francisco and LA to go to seminars in Chicago. I used to drive to Michigan, which is about 5-6 hours to go attend the Michigan Chiropractic Council seminars that they put on. It was awesome. Like I've been drove down to New Jersey or New York and wherever I needed to go. I mean, I learned from Sigafus. My favorite one was Dick Santo. Richard Santo was my favorite, presenter. Went to as many DEs as I possibly could. And yeah, so like my encouragement has always been and still do, if you're going to take anything away from today's podcast, is you need to go outside of your regulatory academic stuff. Do whatever you need to do academic to pass your exams to get out and get your degree. But you got to do those extracurricular activity if you want to better yourself, because the school is going to teach you what's required, but that's not necessarily what's going to make you a great chiropractor.
It's true. Do you know, in pretty much every single podcast so far, like all of people who have been in this industry for a while, they're all saying you do need to go that extra mile and look elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But how, so you went to a lot of things. How do you find out about them? Like, where are they?
Well, I guess I'm trying to remember now. Like it just was around. So okay, let's go back to what you just said. Like, everybody you've had on this podcast has mentioned the same thing. Well, let's ask the question, why are we even on your podcast? Like, why did you interview us versus anybody else? Well, I'm going to make the assumption that you have interviewed us because we were recommended, or we have a name, or we've done something to the profession that someone thinks it's special, right? Like, I'm not saying I'm special than anybody else, but I'm saying is that we created a reputation of some sort of success with either practice or something. So learn from that. Like, why wouldn't you, right? If you were trying to be the best tennis player in the world, right, or even just be better at tennis, don't you want to like figure out like what did the best tennis player do, right, and try to copy as many things as possible, like if that's what your goal is. So if you're listening to as a student or new grad and thinking like, I want to be the best version of my who I am, you don't need to copy any of us, because I would highly recommend not to do that. I want you to be your own version of your chiropractor. But if you're going to do that, you want to like learn the traits and habits of what makes them successful in the first place. So therefore what I did was to answer your second part of your question, which is how do I learn about it? I followed as many chiropractors that I wanted to be, right? Not to like be like them, but there's certain, when you meet chiropractors, and there are a lot of them that are, how do I say it politically correct? There's a lot of them that you go like, yeah, they're famous, they're great, but I don't resonate with them. Okay, then don't be like them, right? Like, because the energy is not necessarily you. I'm not saying they're not good, or it's not good or bad. It's just that sometimes you don't resonate with them. So I would personally go find, and honestly, don't listen to speakers. Don't go to just the speakers, because you know I think that's the fault. I think what you should do is go and observe chiropractors that you resonate with, like energetically, chiropractors that have similar mannerisms to you, chiropractors who have similar beliefs to you, or maybe even different beliefs to you, and go observe them. That's what I did. So when I observed these chiropractors, just through conversations and their desire to want to help me, they just would recommend you should go to this seminar. And once you start to get involved in chiropractic, the seminars just come to you. Like, there's so many. Well, this especially pre-COVID for sure. Like, there's tons of seminars that you can go to. You just got to go find them. But that's effort. Like, you got to go and figure it. They're not just gonna just land on your feet and like, hey, you should come to this, right? Sometimes that happens, but you have to search for it. I think, unfortunately, when we're in school, like, think about this. Since the age of 5, for most of us, things have been given to, like, things have just given to you, right? You go to school, teachers go, here's your homework. This is the homework. You got to study this for this exam. Like everything is done for you. When you get to university, when I went to University of Waterloo, one of the first things I recognized is like, oh, these lecturers don't care whether you do your homework or not, right? They just go, here's your assignment. And he just like blabble on for like a 90 minutes. And then he goes, okay, at the end, I remember my very first class, he would speak for like 90 minutes. I have no idea what he's talking about, right? He's like, he just does his thing. And he goes, okay, guys, end of class now. You need to read chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 by next week. I'm like, what the hell? That's a lot of homework. And then you come back and like, okay, I read all the chapters. Like, he doesn't care. He's not going to check up on you because he's like, the exam's going to cover it. So like whether you do it or not, I don't care. And that was a really good switch in my mindset. I'm like, okay, like this is about a little bit more about my ownership of my education than than the teachers forcing it. Where in high school, teachers were on your case, right? Or at least the good ones were on your case, whether you got your good marks or not. And so I think the switch needs to be like when you're I mean, I just shot a video on this. Is like turning pro. Like when you're going to be a professional, right? You're going to be a professional. So which means like in sport, you're no longer an amateur. Okay. And so when you think about being a pro, turning pro means that you got to do what pros do. You're going to have discipline. You're going to have to commit. You're going to have to sacrifice. And what that means that you have to search out for the best or to be the best. And that might mean hiring the best coach, hiring, that might mean go get your nutrition right. That might mean get your, exercise routine, your sleep habits right. You have to go and do that. No one's going to come and rescue you. And so for the new grads and students, like if you think that, your goal is to just get a job, I don't think you're aiming high enough, right? Like I think you need to be figuring out like, what kind of chiropractor do I want to be? What kind of career do I want to have? That's on you. I know not everybody's as ambitious. That's fine, but you got to define that. No one's going to tell you who you're going to be. And so I think once you define who you want to be, then you got to figure out how do I get there? And you're not going to get it just from learning things from school. Yes, I know you pay a ton of money to school to finish, but that's just like the minimum standard, right? So you got to think of like the school is just the minimum standard. Is what you do beyond that that's going to define you and make the difference.
I'm pretty pumped up after that. I need to start reading like more books and taking ownership of my own education.
Well, exactly. And that's the sad part about education, as a whole. Okay. That sad part, and this is not just in chiropractic, like this isn't everywhere, is that it's a business, right? Like you got to understand it. And as much as I don't like saying that, but it is a business. Like your school, whatever school you attend to, no matter what school you go to, it's a business. Universities is a business. And so their job isn't to make you the best chiropractor in the world. Their job is to run their business and so that they can get as many students and then graduate them. Like their job is to graduate. They don't care whether you graduate or not. They just care that enough people graduate. So they don't care about the individual, right? And so you have to, every single one of you have to decide like this is what I need and this is what I want and this is how I need to educate. Like you got to do this on your own. Like no one's going to help you. And this is life. And that's the difference between school and life. School is like someone is there. Let's face it, most of us probably didn't enjoy school that much. But why did we go? Well, it's because we had to, right? By law, we most of had to, or parents had, put us there. But once you get out, you have a choice. But the life you're going to live beyond school, and that's the biggest difference, the biggest lesson I learned. So once I graduated chiropractic college, I'm like, this is on me now. Like I remember the mindset shift I had to make in my very first week. I'm like, damn, like no one is now telling me when to study, what to study, and there's no more exams. There is no life exams anymore, right? So think about in chiropractic college, you at least like, hey, there's an exam, there's a final exam, there's like, okay, so there's always like a routine, like so you get to pass. When you graduate, what happens? There's no more exams. There's no more time schedule. You don't have anyone then telling you what to study anymore. Damn, this is on you now. That's a scary thought for most people. And so what does that mean? Of course, now you're gonna have to grow up. And that's what I mean by turning pro. Like you have to take your life by its horns and you gotta have to figure this out. And so when you recognize that, if you recognize that as a student, that's when you go, okay, I'm going to utilize this time. Because once you, so here's the thing, the difference between a student and a new, so when you come out, when you graduate, as a student, you can have the excuse a little bit, right? And you, plus, you know what? You have freaking time. You know what I mean? Like
Oh,
you
right.
have time. Like you, all you're doing is really studying, going to school and socializing. Let's face it, right? When you're adult, like when you come out in life and do adult stuff, that's when the bill starts ticking over, right? So unless you got a great family and support system and financially support you, this is on you now, right? So which means like if you don't work, you don't get paid, and you don't get paid, you don't live very well, right? So you got to figure out like what kind of life do I want to have, and then you got to decide on how I'm going to work for it, and that means most of the time is you need to educate. Now, if most of you would spend 4 to 5 years in chiropractic college, become a chiropractor, right?
Yeah.
So how many years are you going to dedicate and find out to how to become a great business person, great communicator, a great chiropractor? Like all that stuff takes time. So you can't just go, okay, my mindset's shifted now. I'm going to be a great chiropractor now. No, it doesn't happen like that. Like it's going to take years. So you might as well utilize this time in school to do that and lead up to it. For those new grads, it's kind of a bit late now. Well, doesn't mean that you can't start, right? So you gotta buckle down, and the next 2 to 3 years is where you gotta put your head down and are working hard and doing all those things.
It is so true. Like, and it comes back to that what you were saying about just owning your own education, and going the extra mile for being the best chiropractor. Like, you do have to have that passion within you to just go that extra mile. What did you do? So you say you went to a lot of seminars during
Yeah.
university. So like you graduate, what has been your process since graduating? Where
Yeah. So I'll actually, you just remind me of something that I should probably share. That I wrote a post about this today, and one of the things I said, when you turn pro, you do the things that no one knows you do. You start, do a certain sacrifice that no one sees you do it. No, people don't. People see the big transition. Like when Muhammad Ali won, when he was considered the greatest boxer of all time. What he said was like, yeah, you see me as the champion, and that's what we kind of praise him for. But we never praise him or even look at the amount of hours of training he did to lead up to a fight.
yeah,
But that's the same thing for us. No one sees the amount of work you put in. So let me give you a hint of that, right? I didn't think it was a big deal because this is how I was. So back 24 years ago, when I first started chiropractic college, I drove a car that had a cassette tape player. I'm dating myself, but that's exactly what I did. And every day I drove 20 minutes from my house to school, and I put in cassette tapes, recordings. Most of them were bootlegged from these seminars. So I told you I went to physically live seminars, but
yeah,
for a long time, like I was bootlegging. I took to go to the seminars. I would have a tape recorder, go to the front row, not even in the seats. I would sit on the ground, like because they were big, big events,
yeah,
hundreds of people, and then I would just sit on the ground on the carpet, get the tape recorder as close as possible to the speaker, and tape record the whole thing so I can re-listen to this stuff. Now you have freaking stuff just on your phone. Back then you had a tape recorder. That's what I did. It was crappy audio, and I would pop it in my car, and I would listen to that every day. And I listened to DeMartini, and I could probably do his speech and probably cry at the same time he cries. All that stuff. Like that's how I did it. Um, to be honest with you, I still do this to this day. I listen to podcasts like this, and no matter where I go, even when I'm washing the dishes, I'm listening to something, audiobooks, podcast, set it up to like 2 times speed, and I just listen. I just absorb information. I've been doing that for 24 years, every day. Go to the gym, I'm listening, driving to the gym. Obviously, I'm not listening while I'm working out, but it's like, you got to find the time. Like you got to figure out like the efficiency of like, where do you absorb information? And so that's one thing I did, and I encourage all of you to do that, is that you have so many great people doing podcasts nowadays. It's all free. It's all good audio and everything. Like you have no excuse compared to what I used to have to. I mean, I went to the extent of like when I moved to Australia after I graduated, I made sure I bought a car that had cassette tape player in it because I brought all my cassette tapes and I listened to it every day before I went to practice and after practice. Like seriously, I had that car for like years because I needed the cassette tape player, right? I didn't there was nothing on the CD. I couldn't afford the on purpose, CDs and stuff like that. So that's definitely one thing. Um, that's what I did. And this I think the other things that you want to do is you want to, like I told you, observe as many chiropractors as possible and learn from them, learn from their mistakes. Because there's, you want to stand on the shoulders of giants, and they would teach you a lot of things that they, could have done or that they would have done better. And I think that you can learn a lot from them. I went to a lot of clubs in my first year. I would start school at, I think, 8 a.m. in the morning. And I think school finished at 5 p.m. It was a full schedule. I had probably like 13 or 15 classes.
Mhm.
Then I would stay for every club I could find between Mondays and Fridays. So literally, I would not get home till about 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock every night.
Were they all
I went to,
chiropractic clubs?
yeah, I would join every technique club that was available, every philosophy club that was available on, like I learned Thompson's, I learned MPI, like I was adjusting in first year, right? Because I knew that I did not want to become that fourth year, like in my last year in clinic, being that person who's got sweaty palms and shaking. I'm like, I'm not going to be that guy.
No.
And so I made a commitment, and I was like, I don't know if you've interviewed Jamie Richards, but you should go check him out in Life by Design. And he and I were like, like buddies, and we were, he talks about like we were each other's first. We got in the back of the classroom in first year, and we did a cervical adjustment. I still remember that
Yeah,
adjustment,
I
and
remember as well. Like, I remember mine. Yeah.
yeah, and it's like, we weren't allowed to, but hell with it. Like we're gonna spend, the rest of our lives to do it, and we're gonna figure it out. We're gonna have to make some mistakes along the way. Of course, we were smart about it, but we all thought, well, okay, next week. Like it's like literally planning for your first. Like, okay, right, we're gonna get this ready. Okay, we learned this. I'm like, okay, next week we're gonna plan. We're gonna practice all week, and the next day, like, I can't wait. Let's just do it now.
It is, you need that eagerness as well. But I think that's what's lacking at the moment. I see a lot of students who are just going through the motions at uni and they don't love chiropractic. And I keep saying to them, it's because you don't know enough about what's out there in chiropractic. Like there is something out there within chiropractic for everyone, whether it is Gonstead, like more analytical, like doing measurements, or like there's so much to adventure and explore within it outside of university. Um, that
Well, this is not like, even if you're, I think this advice will come for anybody who is not necessarily even a chiropractor. But I think if you don't love what you do, um, life's just going to be hard. That's just the consequence of it. Okay. So like, I'm not saying that you need to love chiropractic, but all I'm saying is that if you don't love what you do every day, life becomes a chore and it's a job,
yeah,
and you never really will accelerate, and you would never really, it would just be work all the time. Now, we all need to work. And the reason why we need to work is we need money.
yeah,
And the reason why we need money, because obviously we need to live in this, Western society. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's just the way the game is set up, right? So, but if you find love and passion for the work that you do, life just gets easier. I'm not saying it's easy, but it just gets easier because now you have actually combined work, which is necessary to pay the bills, but you actually then combine it with something that you love. Then all of a sudden, work doesn't become work anymore. Work becomes play, and that's not for everybody. Chiropractic is not for everybody. I still remember his name. I won't say it, but he went to university with me, and then we went to chiropractic college together. We're in the same class, and within about 3 to 4 months, he said, Lawrence, I'm going to quit. I'm like, why? He's like, it's not for me. And I remember thinking, because it was tough to get in. It was 162 slots in only school in Canada other than the French school. I think there was like 3,000 applicants, to go for 162 slots.
yeah.
And, he qualified, went through all these rounds and got in. And 3 months later, like, he's just like, I'm quitting, I'm gone. And I admire that. I admire that because he made a strong decision to let go of something he thought he wanted. But you know what? I think he's better off for it. I don't know where he ended up, but he's better off for it because he made a choice not to continue 4 years and then realize at the end and going, this is not for me. Right. It's always a tough choice. And so I think it's important to kind of recognize is that all I'm saying is see if you can find the love for it. Okay. When people say passion, by the way, passion is in love. Okay. Passion, the root word for passion in Latin is to suffer. So when someone says find the passion for whatever, let's say in this case, chiropractic, it's about are you willing to suffer through this? Are you willing to suffer for it? It's almost like because when you're on purpose and you go, like, this is what I want to do, I'm willing to sacrifice, I'm willing to suffer through it to get the benefits of that. It's not
Should
just
it
for the love,
should it be
So
a
I think
suffer though?
it's what you're willing to suffer through because you know the benefit on the other side. So like when you go to a workout, like I don't know if anybody does like like if you do a hard workout, I don't enjoy it.
Yeah.
It's freaking painful. But what do I love? I love the feeling after. I love the benefits of that. I'm willing to suffer through that because there's the purpose of that. So what I'm saying is, and I just don't know what you're getting at. It's like when people say, find your passion, isn't just to go like, I'll just do because the problem with finding your passion, people thinking that that's love, it's like it's meant to be easy. No, it's not meant to be easy.
It's the
Like
opposite.
finding it's the opposite. It's the
Yeah.
exact opposite. It's about what you like. I mean, when someone goes to, passion for golf or tennis or whatever sport they're into,
Yeah.
it's about they're willing to sacrifice and suffer through it because they enjoy it that much, so much so on the other side of it. Does that make sense? But if you're only thinking like, oh, I mean, this is painful, this is so hard, I must not have passion for it. No, 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 no. Like, don't see it as that way. Because there's a great book by Ryan Holiday. It says, "The obstacle is the way." And this is right there. The obstacle is the way. Meaning, like, when there's an obstacle, that is sometimes the way of like the path of what you're trying to pursue. Because everything that's worth pursuing has an obstacle. If you think back of anybody who's like listening right now and think back to your life, when you make the toughest, like any defining moment in your life, okay, any defining moment, doesn't really matter what it is. I guarantee you remember that moment because it was freaking tough. It was a tough decision, right? If I asked you what you had for lunch on Wednesday last week, you're not going to remember because it wasn't that tough of a decision. Do you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
when I asked you, like, what was the defining moment in your life? And like, for me, it was like when I decided to like leave Canada to go to Australia. Like, that was the defining moment of my life. After 20 years, I left Australia to go to Portugal right now. I'm living in Portugal. That's a defining moment in life. I know that's going to be a mark in my life. You know what I mean? So yeah, because it was tough. It's not easy. Like, of course, on the outside on Facebook, like, yeah, oh my God, they just jumped ship and just took a leap, sold up everything. Yeah, that's what you saw, but you never saw the months of deliberation and consideration of my kids and my family, my wife, and all that stuff. It's not easy. It was hard. It's still hard, but don't regret it. And so I think that's the thing is that we just forget hardship. Like when you think about your degree you're getting, was that easy? No, it was freaking brutal. 4 years of like mental exams and like it's learning stuff that I'll never use. That's freaking brutal.
True.
So if you're going to suffer through it, you might as well get a payoff of the love of the work. And so I think my encouragement is to see if you can find the passion, because I think your life will be so much easier. Because what's the purpose of life? The purpose of life isn't for you to become a chiropractor. I guarantee it. I know everybody says that, but it's not. The purpose of your life is so you can be happy. So go be happy and find out what's going to make you happy. If it's not going to be a chiropractor, then don't be that. Go find something else.
Yeah.
Like, I don't encourage everybody to say chiropractor just because I think chiropractor is, the best profession or whatever. I don't. Like I think it's about finding what's right for you, and you got to find what you're passionate about and go do that. If you are trying to figure out how to be the best, then great, go for that. But if you don't think chiropractic is right for you, then go do something else. It's okay. Like you don't have to live up to anybody else's expectation other than yourself. That's my personal opinion.
I now know why you like write books and stuff, and like, well, you have like I read your passage in the 33 thing, and like do all your stuff because you are very
Right.
inspirational when you talk. Actually,
Thank
I just
you.
got very pumped with that, and you put it into perspective very simply and easily, which is nice. So my question then, if you went and spoke at a university,
Mhm.
and afterwards in the hallway you just saw a student who was just sitting around very confused, looking like they're not really sure what's going on and what to do, hypothetical situation, what you go up to them, what do you say?
Yeah, one of the things I would probably wouldn't say anything. I would probably ask questions. And I think the reason why it's important to ask questions, this is just good advice for you guys to dealing with patients, is that never assume, right? You don't know anybody's situation. You don't know why they look that way, or you don't know what's going on inside their own head. You don't know their life story. You don't know, their point of view and their worldview. You don't know what's going on with them at any given moment. So I think instead of like, I think a lot of times, I think the fault of chiropractors is that we tend to preach, and I think we preach too soon. And I think that, I love to kind of, I think one of the most important things about being a chiropractor is being a really good communicator. And a good communicator is about learning to listen first. And so the first thing I would do is to that student is I would just be asking. I would just be looking, what's going on?
Yeah.
Tell me about yourself. What's happening? And try to get to the root cause. And then most people are going to answer with, whatever they're going to say, but that's just the surface level. And so going back to the patient, like, well, let's teach, right, a little bit. So when you're listening to someone, everybody's going to give you the surface answer, which is what they expect what people should say. Or and but you as the communicator or the chiropractor or the person just being a human being, you just need to dig deeper and to figure out and be a detective of what's underlying that. Like, why are they saying that? And if you can get to that middle, like the next ground, which is instead of the surface levels, the deeper level, which is like the cause of that anxiety or the cause of that, um, the sadness that they're experiencing, then you have a chance to relate to that person. If a person, and what I mean by that is like if a patient goes, oh, I got this back problem. Okay, like, but that's not why you showed up, because you waited 5 years to show up. Why did you wait 5 years? You know what I mean? Like, there's a reason for that. So why today? Why me all of a sudden? Like, something must have happened and triggered them to make that decision. So with that student, I would ask them questions to figure out exactly what's caused them. And then my job, I think, isn't the typical answer. My job isn't to tell them what to do. My job is to guide them and hopefully coach them towards something that is more aligned with who they are. So when I coach my clients, I don't tell them how they to practice, because how I practice is not necessarily how you would practice, nor should you. I think everybody has their own desire, and I think the most important thing is I have a saying called align and amplify. That's actually my company's name. So like, it's align and amplify means like, how do you align your business to who you are fundamentally as a person? So how do you align your practice to be fundamentally who you want to be? How sure are you that's who you want to be? So we got to get into that first, right? So then we once we align, then you have an ability to amplify. And amplifying means that you then, once you know who you are and you own yourself, right? You own that energy, you then vibrate at a certain frequency. And when you amplify that, now the next thing is, how do we amplify this? So we now know how to market that, right, to the world. How do we sell that? How do we market that? So that's the amplification, because now we can amplify that frequency. And so let's say you amplify it at 33 hertz.
Yeah.
Well, people in 33 hertz are going to see you and go, freaking, you're the person I want to see, right? You get me. People on 34 and 32 hertz will get you too, because they're kind of nearby. But someone who's in 72 hertz won't even know you exist. And that's a good thing. You don't need everybody. You just need the people. Like, we've all been in the situations where you meet a certain person. Like, I met someone this morning. It's like, yeah, our energies don't vibe. Like, not anywhere, but it's like, I'll be courteous, I'll be nice,
Yeah.
but it's like, we're not going to be best friends. And that's okay, right?
Dude,
We're not
that's
meant to
like
be.
that's like so everyone's so different in their answers. I'm going to be really annoying. It's literally going to like cut us off any second because it cuts us off after 40 minutes.
Right.
Um, but thank you so much for your time. I'm sorry I have to be like quite brutal with it, but thank you
No,
so
no,
much
it's
for
fine.
like all of that. It's really helpful. If people want to get in touch, can they contact you online? Is that okay? I'll pop all your links below if that's all
Yeah,
right.
absolutely. Just like search me up online. I'm on Facebook, Instagram.
Perfect.
I just started TikTok, but like, just look at my name, search my name. You can go on my website, lawrencetam.com, driveyourpractice.com, align your
Yeah.